What's going on, football fans? It's me, J.R. Clark, back again with another rendition of the Pound for Pound. This time it's kind of like a Falcon Eye View edition, I guess you could say. But it's more or less a continuation on the type of videos that I've been doing these last few weeks. Kind of been bouncing back and forth between the offensive and defensive side. Taking a closer look at either formations or schemes, like how players might be used and things of that nature. And today is going to be much the same. Today's film is going to be focused on the offensive line and the scheme that we are going to be running, as far as like the blocking scheme, what I feel like we're going to be running. I've got a lot I want to talk about today, so I'm going to break it up into some sections. I'm going to talk about scheme, I'm going to talk about coaches, and then I'm going to talk about personnel. All right, so let's just start out initially with scheme. We know that Arthur Smith runs a zone blocking style scheme. We know that he's also stated that he's going to be mixing in some man scheme as well, as all good NFL coaches do. But my time of film study that I've done with him at Tennessee, with his time of calling plays, it seems that the zone scheme is going to be heavily implemented, especially when you have quotes like this coming out from Jake Matthews. This was back earlier in the OTA days. He says, "I love the wide zone scheme," Matthews says. We had a lot of success with it in the past. I'm excited to get back to more stuff like that. I'm excited to run the ball more. That's our goal as an offensive line, to take over games like we used to. That's the standard that we have. So that right there kind of gives you an early idea, an early inclination of what we are going to be doing, the type of scheme that we're going to be running. So a wide zone scheme is literally what it sounds like. So I'm going to show you a picture here. Okay. Yeah, that'll work. It's not necessarily, this is like the outside zone, but the wide zone is just that. It's the running back going wider. The point of the mesh point between the quarterback and the running back is more of I don't know how you would call it other than to say I don't want to keep using the word wide, but that's what it is. It's a wider mesh point for where the ball carrier gets the ball. And what you typically see in a wide zone scheme, when you watch it, one of the ways you can identify it is you see a lot of lateral movement on the offensive line. Okay, and in a zone blocking scheme, I'm going to try to this is inside blocking, but what this shows, take a look at this diagram. Okay, what I like about this is that it also shows it in a 12 personnel, which is something that we are going to run quite a bit. I feel like is you're going to have 12 and 13 personnel, especially with, as we'll get into in the personnel section, some of the injuries that we're already facing. I think you're going to see quite a bit of 12 personnel. But as it's displayed here in this particular diagram, you see how the tackle and guard are combination blocking to the defensive tackle. And then once the tackle or the guard, whichever way the defensive tackle, whichever zone he comes into, that's who's going to handle him. If he's coming more trying to attack the tackle, then the tackle is going to take him, the guard will chip and then move up to the second level. Okay, you see that on the right side of that formation where the tackle is taking the defensive end head on, the guard comes in, gives him a little bit of chip, and then moves up to the middle linebacker. Now that guard can go one way or the other. It can go double team into the defensive tackle, double team into the defensive end. But that's what the zone blocking is. It's something that Toby D spoke on our live stream, is the ability to combination block. You got two guys on one, which create a more of a cutback lane for the running back. You can see in this particular diagram that I have up right now, where you have more of the the running back has options, okay? What I mean by that is depending on what that guard does, depending on where the hole is, the running back can either bounce it out wide, or you could call that stretching it, bouncing out to the outside of the tackle, or cutting it in between the guard and the center. So that's the key to the inside or just the zone period. But this diagram shows you, again, look at the tackle and guards. Okay, the tackle and guards are double teaming. Now, a lot of times you can have a tackle and guard double team, or the guard and center. That's why, at least in this scheme, I'm not necessarily as concerned about who wins out that left guard position, which again we're going to get into, because that guard is going to be doing a lot of combination blocking, a lot of very rarely are they going to be asked to hold the point of attack by themselves. Okay, I mean, it's going to happen. You're not going to run zone on every single play, but the vast majority of it is going to be, zone plays. Let's see here. This is that second level blocking that I was talking about. If the defensive end pinches inside, you can see where it's labeled D in pinch. If that defensive end comes in and tries to attack the shoulder of the guard, this one you'll have the tackle, help and then come out to the second level. That's where the type of athleticism that you're looking for in offensive linemen come into play. You need guys who can climb the pocket, who can get to the second level in short order. And I believe that that's the kind of guys that we are bringing together, right? Now, Arthur Smith also likes to use a ton of play action, right? And this is from an article that I found while doing research. It says among the three teams, the Rams, Titans, and Browns are 2nd, 5th, and 12th, respectively, in play action rates. The wide zone scheme is conducive to more of a play action structure because of the horizontal movement of the offensive lineman. As a second level defender or even a safety, it's impossible to differentiate between a wide zone run and a play action pass from under center. Arthur Smith marries these things together really well. And there's a misconception out there that you have to have a productive run game to make play action work. That's not the case. You just have to commit to running the ball in a lot of ways to make play action work. Like, the defense has to believe that you're actually going to run it. And I think we have the coach that's going to do that. And you have the scheme that sets up well for it. When all the guys, like the entire offensive line, takes a step to the left or takes a step to the right, all of them start flowing, to that direction. You have the running back going, everything looks like a run. And then you can either do the naked boots coming out the back, or what have you, as far as misdirection plays, as far as play action pass. I mean, obviously we watched Shanahan do it in 2015 and 16, just absolutely carving people up. And Arthur Smith has done the same, at least with the effectiveness up there in Tennessee. And I believe he will continue to do so here. And the zone blocking scheme makes it easier for offensive linemen. It's a complicated scheme that requires a lot of reps to get it down. But once you get it down, it becomes less complicated because you know what you're doing. You know where your help is coming from. Okay? In a zone blocking scheme, very rarely are offensive linemen asked to be on an island and hold the point of attack, which again, I think is super important for the type of offensive lineman that we have. Not necessarily the top talented, but and some not even necessarily experienced. But I believe that this type of scheme is what's going to help elevate their play. Now, let's get into another thing that's going to help elevate this offensive line's play. And that's this man right here. If you don't know who this man is, understandable. This is Dwayne Ledford. He's our offensive line coach. Never in my short career of, being a whatever you consider me, whether it's a amateur analyst, very amateur, or content creator, whatever you consider me. In my short stint of doing this, never have I ever been excited about an offensive line coach. Like, I couldn't have told you anything about Chris Morgan. Like, I didn't even know he was an offensive line coach until I started looking into Dwayne Ledford. Okay? Now, Dwayne Ledford has, and you can Google this article. I brought this article up before, but literally if you put in the Dwayne Ledford effect, it's an article that was well written. And when he used to play, he played offensive line. He coached over in a couple high schools, coached over in NFL Europe, come back stateside, got a job at Appalachian State, which under his tutelage, you saw them go, like Ledford's O-line group ranked in the nation's top 10 in what is considered adjusted sack rate, and top 40 in both percentage of 5+ yards to carry and short yardage conversion rates. So with Dwayne Ledford, like, in charge of the O-line, everywhere he has been, the O-line has gotten better, the sack rates have gone down, and the productive carries have gone up. One of the things that he teaches, one of the main things he teaches, is zone blocking, which I believe is the reason why he was brought here. He reminds me of like a young Mike Tice in the sense of being able to take necessarily talented, not necessarily as talented offensive linemen and produce well on the offensive line. It says a year later, the pass protection in the stayed in the upper echelon. 26 adjusted sack rate, made great strides in the run game, jumping from 65 to 28, and from 39th percentage of 5+ yards running. Carries to 10th. So what I'm saying is that you've seen a statistical evidence of Dwayne Ledford, and that always gets me excited. And it wasn't just App State, because under there he was under a coach, Starfield, I believe, whoever the current head coach of Louisville is. I'm blanking on his name, so you'll have to forgive me there. But he also went to NC State, where I believe he coached, was it Bradbury, I think it's from NC State? Could be wrong on that one. Is when he took over at NC State in offensive line in 2015. Before Ledford, their offensive line ranked 107th in adjusted sack rates and 119th on standard downs and 115th on passing downs. So not good, right? The improvement, this part I love right here. The improvement was marked and immediate, leaping to the 36th of standard downs, 8th on passing downs, 10th in overall adjusted sack rate. With the following April rolled around, one of his star pupils, Will Richardson, became the NC State's first offensive tackle drafted since 2005. That is a marked and immediate improvement. That is a true effect of Dwayne Ledford being on a coaching staff and having an effect on the offensive line. Now, my only concern is that it's college, not the pros. Okay? So, I don't know, like, how well, like, what's the history of coaches transitioning from the college game to the NFL game as far as position coaches go. But I do know that Dwayne Ledford has, like I said, he's had he's had an immediate effect everywhere he's been. Everywhere he's been, sack rates have gone down, run game has become more productive. And these are the things that the Falcons need desperately. He's also probably the reason why Javion Hawkins is here, because he was his former OC at Louisville. So, that's Dwayne Ledford. he's a guy who I think is going to, as much as scheme is going to benefit these offensive linemen, I think the coach is going to benefit the offensive linemen, and he's the coach that I'm super, super excited about. As much as I'm excited about Arthur Smith, I think that it's guys like this that's going to make Arthur Smith's ability to be a head coach and call plays. You know what I'm saying? I think these guys are what's going to make that roll well. Him, Ragone, Charles Landon, those guys are going to make that job easier. But no, we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about offensive linemen. So, we talked about scheme. We talked about how the zone blocking scheme tends to help. Let's see. Yep. In the zone blocking scheme, you're getting initial double teams across the line and having players move to block linebackers. That's the point, is getting to that second level. You need smaller players. You need players who are light on the feet. Everyone has to be able to go from the line of scrimmage to the second level. So you need athleticism more than power. This was the initial concern when we brought Shanahan in, right? Is if you start building a zone blocking scheme or a zone blocking offensive line, it's hard for that line to then transition back to power, which I don't know for sure, but it really seemed like that was the type of runs and stuff that Cutter was leaning towards, more like man principles. Even though, by all accounts, we ran a lot of zone last year, it just didn't seem to do it effectively. So, enter in now the personnel. Okay, let's get this up, right? Because this is the battle. This is the battle that is transpiring. This is the battle that is taking place. Anyway, it is Matt Hennessy versus Drew Dahlman and Josh Andrews versus Jalen Mayfield. This is the battle that everybody, if you're paying attention to the O-line, this is what's got your eye. Who ends up, coming out on top on there? I've heard a lot of people talking about Josh Andrews, saying that the dude is trash, the dude's a bum. In preparation for this video, I watched as much snaps as I could find on Josh Andrews, fully expecting to see a guy getting put on his butt, a guy who looked like Jamon Brown and James Carpenter, just being a turnstile. But I will say this, what I saw in his limited snaps, and I will say limited snaps, because he got less than 400 snaps last season for the Jets, which is the most snaps he's ever had in his career. In his 370 some odd snaps, he only had 8 blown blocks. It's not that bad. That's a pretty low percentage. Okay. The one full game that he played almost all the snaps was against the LA Rams, where he had to go against Aaron Donald and Michael Brockers. And he held his own against Michael Brockers, and he did well against Aaron Donald. But that's not even to try to speak to the scheme that the Jets were running. The Jets were one of the most predictable teams out there. So if a defense knows what you're doing, that creates havoc for the offense. We've seen the reverse opposite. When an offense knows what you're doing, they can just eat you alive. How many second half collapses have we had? Because we didn't change anything. We weren't making people adjust. So the Jets were that on offense. Okay, very predictable. Ran a lot of 11 personnel. Asked their guys to be on an island, and he just wasn't necessarily set up for success. At least I don't feel like he was set up for success. And I feel like maybe he got a little bit of a bad rap out of not having a full freaking season to play. I use the example on the live stream. Would you have trusted, or would you have been excited about Mike Davis had he not had the year he had for Carolina? I don't think he would have been. I know I wouldn't have been. So I'm not, so all I'm saying about Josh Andrews is that he hasn't played enough to be considered trash, in my opinion. Now, if you want to talk about he's been a career backup, maybe he's been on some teams with some good O-lines, He was, on Green Bay's team for a little while, and they had a pretty decent O-line, so maybe he just couldn't crack it. I don't know. But now he's going to be given a chance, at least to start the camp. Now he's going to have to hold off Jalen Mayfield, and I tell you now, what I saw, the tape that I saw of Mayfield, you talk about an athletic gentleman, and you talk about a guy who is quick off the ball. Like, he flies. His kick step makes it look like he's almost got as good of a first step as some defensive ends. Like, go watch his game against Chase Young in 2019. Like, yeah, Chase Young got his, but he's Chase Young. Of course he's going to get his. But Jalen Mayfield got some of his too, So I don't count out Jalen Mayfield. The question is, how well can he transition from primarily playing right tackle to now playing left guard? And does some of the injuries that we've already had pop up, does that then change their plans? I mean, as it was announced that Caleb Gary has starting the training camp on the physically unable to perform list. So does that open a door for Jalen Mayfield to go back to right tackle, where he played the majority of his snaps in college? There were some analysts out there that had a first or second round grade on Jalen Mayfield as a right tackle. Now, he does have some short arms, and people have some issues with that, but I think his speed could potentially make up for that. But we'll see. The other intriguing battle is Matt Hennessy versus Drew Dahlman. So that's the one that I'm really intrigued by, because I watched Dahlman and at Stanford, and he played real well. He did end up on his backside quite a bit, and I don't know if it's just the way that Stanford asked for them to block, because if he did, a lot of times it was him by himself. But when he was asked to get to the second level, he did that real well. So that's probably a trait that jumped off the page per se to Ledford. And then compared to Hennessy, like, some people believe that Dahlman is much stronger than Hennessy. I don't know if I've necessarily seen that on tape. What I will say with Hennessy seems a lot more fluid in his Temple days. Now, he had 2 or 3 starts at the end of the season for us. And some against some tall tasks, against the Bucks, the Chiefs, which both have good defensive lines. So he didn't necessarily fare that great, but you're going to take your lumps, right? I know his stint at left guard, I don't want to see that again. Like, if Hennessy wins a job, I want it to be at center, right? So that's one of the things there is, like, when it comes to Hennessy, I want him to be either my starting center or my backup center. I don't want him dabbling in guard, because that looked like a dumpster fire. But with all that being said, the offensive line, I think, is going to be helped out a lot by the scheme. What the scheme is going to ask them to do, along with moving Matt Ryan in the pocket and stuff of that nature, I do expect the sack numbers to go down from what they have been, because the scheme is going to ask him to get the ball out quicker, more intermediate routes, more back to like Dinkin and Duncan kind of deal, less 5 and 7 step drops, so less time of him standing in the middle of the field waiting for something to come open downfield. So the weakness on the middle of the offensive line hopefully won't be super glaring. But that's what I got for y'all today. That's my thoughts on the offensive line and on the scheme. I'm super excited to see how it all comes together, and how Arthur Smith deploys his respective unit, the offensive side of the ball. As always, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Grimm1128, GRIMM1128. You can catch us on Patreons if you're into that kind of thing. We have exclusive content, exclusive chat that you can get involved in there, and live streams. Bi-weekly right now, maybe going back to full weekly here soon. I will be at training camp Saturday, so look for me walking around up there. I think most of the crew will be at the last open practice on the 7th of August at the Benz. So try to catch us there. And as always, Falcons fans, rise up.